Today, on the 25th of December, is a major holiday for Christian world, and that is Christmas. Usually, when I deliver speeches on Friday, during the Friday sermon, I don't necessarily get involved much with fatawas, with non-binding legal opinions from the Islamic perspective. But I generally try to inspire myself and every one of us to become better individuals for ourselves, for our families, and society at large. And as I said, stay away from things that are more or things that we can discuss during other times. But since majority of the people, they attend Friday prayers, and we have come to some times where there are so many questions by everyone. And I'm going to go down to those questions later, inshallah. But there are so many questions by many Muslims asking, should we celebrate Christmas? Can we participate in a celebration of Christmas? Can we put up a Christmas tree? Can we buy gifts for children? Can we buy gifts for others who are non-Muslims? Can we tell to somebody Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays? These are questions that, generally speaking, I don't know, in my experience, I'm being bombarded more than any other time, especially during this year. I guess because it's a time of isolation and people, they want to look out there for any opportunity to celebrate, be with their own family, do things with their own family, which technically is something good. And it is emphasized, encouraged by different traditions out there. So now, today, what I intend to do is talk about Islamic perspective of Christmas and how important it is for us Muslims to be aware of our own principles, our own rules, whether they are directly from the Quran or the Hadith of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, or the other two important sources that help us bring the rules into the surface, which is the ijma' of the scholars and the qiyas, the analogy or the deduction, reasoning pretty much. So we have to be familiar without going really into so many details and making it complicated for people to really understand, because sometimes it can be really complicated, and without really trying to give you all the different opinions that are out there, but the thing that I believe to be the right. And I might be wrong in this approach. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me if I say anything wrong. But this is the way how I see it personally. And there are many scholars who would give the answer to these questions in a similar way. And according to a very famous book, as a matter of fact, that comes from Ibn Abidin, who was one of the great scholars of Bilad al-Sham, a Syrian scholar who talked about this issue in his book Al-Hashiyah of Ibn Abidin, Radd al-Mukhtar, for Imam Hasqafi's book. They were both Hanafi scholars. But let me start first by mentioning to you what is our responsibility or what is our approach during a season like this or during a holiday like this. Well, first thing is we have to recognize that this is a Christian holiday. If somebody says, well, this is not a Christian holiday, then I don't think that's right. This is a Christian holiday because it is about Jesus Christ and many other elements that are involved in this. For example, going to the church the night on the 24th, hearing the sermon by the pastor or the priest or the pope, whatever the case may be. It involves Christian rituals. Christmas tree, even the Christmas tree is from a Christian perspective, a Christian symbol. And I know that it has been modified throughout the centuries and all of that by putting toys and by putting all kinds of stuff on them. But overall, it is a Christian symbol. And according to many Christian leaders, it also stands for the Trinity, which is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. As you see the pine tree, for example, it has the top where the star is. Usually they would put the star, and it has the other two edges. It's in a form of a triangle, right? Which has three corners. So they would give this interpretation. How true it is and all of that, I don't really go into much details and try to prove whether it's true or not. That's not my job there. But it is viewed by many Christian scholars or leaders to be as a Christian symbol. So now, do we stop ourselves from expressing our wishes to a group that belongs to a different religion or not? This is the bottom line. This is a very important question. So the answer to this one is yes and no. And scholars, they have talked about this one. They have gone to such an extent where they would consider the person to exit the fold of Islam. If a person says Merry Christmas to Christian people, and of course they have their conditions. There are certain conditions that they say will make a person exit the fold of Islam, and there are some others who say that there is nothing wrong to wish Happy Holidays or Merry Christmas to somebody or to any other person who has their own belief, But again, these scholars who allow that, they also put some conditions as well in order for us to really understand what's behind the scene, what's behind the simple words of Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays. Now, they say, those scholars who allow it, they say, and I agree with that personally, I think that it is okay to mention. Actually, it's a good thing to mention to Christians, to wish them Happy Holidays. It is something good. But we have to know why we're doing it though. And there are people who may say that agreeing with all the Christian elements and celebrating together with Christians, whether they are religious or non-religious rituals that are revolving around Christmas. Now, that kind of action itself is prohibited for sure. Why? Because you are, there is no line anymore now. You have, you're celebrating pretty much everything. What happened to your values? What happens to your religion? What happens to the hadith of Prophet ﷺ that says, "Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum"? And we're going to talk about this one inshallah later on a little bit, because this is a very important hadith to talk about. But first, let's just try to understand this, that, as I said, scholars, they mention a few things. Number one, they say that when you are wishing to Christians Happy Holidays or Merry Christmas, and I know people, they will make a difference between these two, but whatever, either or, you have to keep in mind that number one, you're not getting engaged and you're not necessarily approving everything that they do, as they don't necessarily approve everything that you do. لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينٌ. You have your own faith, you have your own tradition, you believe in those rituals that you do, and I believe in my own tradition. I have my own set of rules. And my religion tells me that certain things that do exist in your religion are actually a part of, for example, shirk, or are part of muharramat, impermissible. And you have to respect me for standing against them and also valuing my own principles and my own tradition. Yet, I will engage with you in a conversation. Yet, I will feel happy that you have a holiday, that you feel happy about it. And I'm going to respect you for that. And I'm going to work with you. Right? I'm going to work with you to do anything that is positive in society, to better our situation as a human in general, to work better for humanity. This is my responsibility as a Muslim. So now, as I said, as long as you don't necessarily participate in rituals, in Christian rituals during this time. And also, it's important, scholars mentioned that it's important for you to have in the back of your mind the idea that this is going to help you build stronger bridges between you and those people. Because it's very crucial to build bridges, to maintain good relations with people of other faiths. And we see this in the example of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We don't need to go into so many details, but Prophet received delegations from outside. He got into discussions with them. He honored them, in particularly Christians from Ethiopia when they came, for example, and you're all familiar with that. He even allowed them to perform a prayer inside of his mosque because they were looking for a place to perform prayers. So you can see this level of tolerance was very high in the character and the persona of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And this is what he teaches us. And it's important to establish these bridges. Those who say, no, we don't need to work with Christians and Jewish people and people of other faiths, it's not important, they're wrong. This is not our faith. This is not the example of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So this first has to be established here. So how can you really engage when you're not really understand these times that are very important to them, and you don't necessarily agree with Christmas, right? But you wish them happy holidays. You understand it is as you are understanding that this is something important to them, and they know that you're not compromising your own faith by wishing them happy holidays. That's something that has to really be understood very well. A question that may arise, and sometimes we see imams and quote-unquote scholars saying, من تشبه بقوم فهو منهم. It's in the Musnad of Imam Abu Dawood rahimahullah ta'ala. The one who resembles a nation or a group of people or a religious community in this case, that person becomes like them. And the hadith is there. We're not denying the hadith. But we're calling people to reflect on the meaning of tashbih here. من تشبه بقوم, the one who resembles a nation. Is it all inclusive? Does it mean that in every single aspect, you imitating a nation, it means that you're going to become like that? For example, you dressing the way how Christians are dressing, or the way how Hindus are dressing, or the way how a different nation dresses or a faith community dresses, that means that you are from them? That's the first question here. Well, how do we know? In order to know the answer of this one, we go back to the life of Prophet ﷺ, where we see that there are instructions, first of all, about awrah. What is the awrah of the male and the awrah of the female? In other words, the dress, the limits, what parts of the body needs to be covered and all of that. But beyond that, we see Prophet ﷺ receiving gifts from kings back at his time. King from Egypt, king from Byzantine Empire, dresses, and he wore these dresses in front of his companions. Now, is the Prophet ﷺ really resembling a nation or a religious community by putting this dress, which was suitable, and it did not reject, or it did not go against any teachings of Islam? Right? Because you can have a dress that is going to expose your awrah. Regardless whether that comes from Muslim countries or non-Muslim countries, I don't care. That's not permissible to be worn. Right? That's impermissible. But again, as long as it fits the criteria of what it means to be an acceptable dress Islamically, even though it's made by Christians or any other faith community, can you really put that on or not? Or even non-religious people at all. I mean, the person who may make it is not religious. Technically, yes. Because we see the Prophet ﷺ putting that on. So, just by giving this example, and we can go on and on with so many other aspects related to this tashbih or this resemblance. But I think just a simple example is good enough to tell us that we have a general word being used here. When we go to the books of fiqh, usul al-fiqh in particularly, we come across words like am and khas, something that is specific and something that is general. And here we're dealing with a general word. But yet, even within that general category, you have another subcategory, two other subcategories that are amun yakhussu anhu shay wa amun lam yakhussu anhu shay. You have a general word being used that includes everything, and you have a general word being used that stands for something in particular, even though the number of those things may be 3, 4, 5, 10, 1,000, whatever. An example of that is people, right? The word people. Do you mean the whole world? It's a general term, or do you mean a group of people? It can mean both of them. It depends how it is used in the context. And again, as I said, scholars, they go into the details of such matters, and they will tell you, well, this is a general term used for everybody pretty much, or this is a general term used for only a specific group of people. So these things are very important to be right understood. We have unqualified individuals who are going to take you this hadith, and they're going to prove their point, and they're going to tell you, مَنْ تَشَبَّهَ بِقَوْمٍ فَهُوَ مِنْهُمْ. The one who resembles a nation, he is from them. He is a kafir because he wore a non-Muslim dress, and because he said Merry Christmas, he's a kafir, he's not anymore a Muslim. Wallahi, there are so many people like this. I've seen imams in an imam gathering place. We had a meeting where hundreds of imams were present, and one of them stood up, took the microphone and said, some of us are dressed with clothes of kuffar. Clothes of kuffar. And if we want our communities to follow us, we need to first be examples of wearing Muslim dresses. I personally was wearing a jacket and a regular shirt and formal pants, business suit. It was an important gathering. I walked out. I walked out of the gathering because it was offending. How do you define? Do you find something in the Quran or the Hadith that tells you that this specific fabric is halal and this specific fabric is haram? I mean, we're not talking about, having pork products and that kind of stuff. We're just talking about normal fabrics. Do you see a distinct there saying that this is haram? Does it mean that only if you wear shalwar and qamis or thobe, right? Subcontinent, Arab countries, thobe, shalwar and qamis. Does that mean that that's the Muslim dress? You define Muslim dress by shalwar and qamis or thobe, and now you are dressed as a Muslim? Since when these became the standards? And for sure, most of them, they do qualify to be a good Islamic dress. But there is no definition for, what is, whether shalwar and qamis or thobe is the Muslim dress. There's no definition for that. As long as it's loose, as long as it's clean, as long as it meets the standards, it covers the awra, that's it. And yes, there are some details here and there about the colors, but even those are controversial among the scholars. Generally speaking, whether it is made in America, it's made in China. China is dominating nowadays everywhere. Or in India or in many other countries. You're going to wear it. Again, as long as, it's good for you. It meets those standards. But there is no definition. There is no a particular cloth that belongs to Muslim. This is a Muslim dress. Yes, in some cultures, it can be distinguished between Muslims and non-Muslims by wearing certain clothes. And I understand that. But you cannot make that as a standard for all Muslims. That becomes very dangerous, because then you're getting into the interpretation of Islam according to the way how you understand, and you have no formal training in Islam. You don't understand these principles at all. And all of a sudden you're given the interpretation of the hadith, مَنْ تَشَبَّهَ بِقَوْمٍ فَهُوَ مِنْهُمْ. The one who resembles a nation, that person is like them, and that's it, خلاص, end of the story. قال النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام. Everybody's a scholar. Because they simply understand the meaning, the translation of the hadith. Now, mashallah, they go and they interpret the way how they want things, without really, as I said, being formally trained and understanding the principles to begin with. The question is, we have many people who are new Muslims. They belong to a family that is Christian, for most part. And can they sit in a table eating dinner during the Christmas night or Christmas Day eating lunch? Definitely they can. They can, and as a matter of fact, it strengthens that bond between them and their family members as well. Again, as long as they don't get involved with religious practices. But as long as it's just a general, for example, eating dinner or eating lunch and being together with family, that's something amazing. That's something really good. So there are many. I'm just covering saying Merry Christmas. I'm covering the topic or the question of whether it is permissible to visit and to be in the house with them or not. I'm also covering few other things, like for example, exchanging gifts. It's totally fine. There is nothing wrong. It's not a religious thing to exchange gifts. Again, as long as you don't do them with an intention, with a different intention, except that strengthening the relation between you and other people of faith. The other thing that I want to close this, inshallah, is with a problematic approach by some modern Muslims nowadays, where they're going to the other extreme, where they're saying that, well, we celebrate the birth of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, right? And my answer to that one is yes. We do gatherings of Mawlid. Some individuals will say that it is not permitted, and majority, they say it's okay. Of course, as long as it does not include things that are considered to be muharramat. I gotta repeat this often, just to make it clear. In the Mawlid gatherings, usually, you have Quran recitation, you have na'ats or nasheed, these beautiful poems recited with beautiful voices, and you have speeches, lectures delivered by qualified people talking about the virtues, the character, and overall the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have du'as being involved. This is all good stuff. These are all things that we receive rewards, as a matter of fact, from getting involved in such gatherings. Well, now these people that would say, if we do that, then don't we accept Jesus or Isa to be a prophet? Just like Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And the answer to that is, yes, we all know that. It's mentioned in the Quran. Every Muslim believes in Jesus as well, being a prophet, a messenger of God. And then the question is, then if that's the case, then why can't we celebrate the birth of Jesus as well? First of all, we don't know for sure, historically. Even Christians, they don't know for sure. And I asked pastors, people who are qualified, they say, we don't know for sure in what day he was born. And even the month is questionable. But I understand, they would celebrate it. They have chosen a day to celebrate. I understand that. It gathers people around, and knowing that this is not the exact day, or it may be or it may not be, I understand that concept. But we do have a month in which Prophet ﷺ was born, Rabi'ul Awwal, and it's controversial about 11th of Rabi'ul Awwal or 9th of Rabi'ul Awwal or 13th, whatever the case is. Now, that's one thing. That's one thing that we know, the month. But regardless, you can gather for Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's coming to this world, for the farh, for the joy, to express that joy any time throughout the year. And yes, technically, any Muslim can gather to express the joy of Jesus, of Isa alayhi salam, coming into this world and any time during the year. But let's gather and let's do a recitation of the Quran, like we do for Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam's gatherings, right? When we gather for such gatherings. Let's also reflect on the life of Isa alayhi salam, the way how the Quran and the Sunnah talks about him. Let's also reflect on how important it is for our communities to carry those messages that were delivered and practiced by Isa alayhi salam back then. So, if you want to gather and express your joy for Isa alayhi salam, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with gathering for Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, for Sayyidina Yaqub, for Sayyidina Musa, Moses, any prophet of God. You want to gather and celebrate joyfully they're coming to this world and coming with the haqq, with the truth, you're more than welcome to do so. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to celebrate the coming of Jesus to this world, practicing other faiths practices, then that's a different story. If you consider, to start lighting up candles and putting a Christmas tree and going to a church, listening to, by the way, going to a church, it depends for what intention you go to, but I'm talking about going to a church with the intention of participating in the mass and listening carefully and being a part of the gathering, and following the rituals and all of that, then you are from that category that says, مَنْ تَشَبَّهَ بِقَوْمٍ فَهُوَ مِنْهُمْ. The one who resembles a nation, that person is from that nation or from that group of people. Then that's where we distinguish things. So again, you want to celebrate? Bismillah. Let's talk about it. Let's sit down. Let's remember his life. Let's feel joy for Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam coming to this world. It's something really that everybody should feel joy. And we have for that in our tradition, where the companions of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, they were gathered. And they were saying, oh, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, and they start talking so good about him and mentioning some amazing stuff about him. And they talk about Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, companions of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam. Long conversation. And they talk about Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. وَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا رُوحٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ, about Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. And they mention all of these amazing qualities that they possessed and amazing achievements they had in their lives. And Prophet ﷺ hears all of this conversation, and he does not say, shame on you. He does not say like, hey, I'm the messenger here of God, you have to forget about all of them because I came with a new Sharia, I came with the Quran, I came da. No. What was the answer of Prophet ﷺ? He said, it is true that Adam alayhi salam was this. It is true that Musa alayhi salam was that. It is true that Ibrahim, it is true that Isa alayhi salam. But he says, I'm also the messenger of Allah and his beloved, and I'm not boasting about it. I'm not showing off, but I am the beloved of God. So each of these prophets, they had a significant expression. For example, how we define them, like Musa alayhi salam, Kalimullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke directly to Musa. Right? Khalilullah, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. The very close, the one who achieved so much intimacy, so much proximity with God. That was the laqab of Sayyidina Ibrahim, the nickname. So what about Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam? Habibullah. He was the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he said, I'm not saying this to boast, to be arrogant or show pride in front of you, but this is the reality. So, subhanAllah, you see this wisdom in interacting with his companions, not denying their qualities, and feeling actually good that they are able to recognize these qualities in the other prophets, and feel joy for them. But at the same time, this is my reality too. I'm talking to you about my reality. Recognize this as well, without boasting. Just mentioning to you this reality. So I think these are very important understandings that we have to also tell the others. We have to engage with the others in conversation in order to clarify some misconceptions that might be out there, or in order to explain the way how certain hadiths or certain ayahs from the Quran needs to be explained. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.